On today's episode of Jams on IT, we're going to take a look at Windows Server 2025 and see what's new. Let's get into it. So as I mentioned in the offset of this video, we're going to take a look at Server 2025, some of the new features and things. And here I'm installing it on a VM. Now we have a couple different versions. You can use the standard edition or the desktop experience. We're going to go with desktop experience. That way we have a GUI. The standard evaluation, you have a very basic GUI. So it's a tore down server core type installation. So with this, let's go ahead and get installing. We'll let Windows build the partition table it likes, and we'll go ahead and let it finish. So with Server 2025, there's quite a number of improvements. First off, as always, it seems like just about every version of Windows that comes out nowadays, there's many improvements in core services such as like Active Directory and integrations with like Azure Arc and other services. If you look down in the description below, and we'll link to it, but and we're going to cover some of these items today, not all of them. But there's quite a number of improvements, and you'll see the what's new page there on Microsoft. But just to understand, now with the new version of Active Directory, we have an extensible storage engine. That means that the database, where it used to be back in Windows 2000 days when it first was introduced, it was around 8K worth of page size storage. Now they've increased it to 32K database page format. So that means you can now exceed that 8K bytes in size. So that greatly increased how many things such as, the longer values, more attributes, things like that you can have in your Active Directory database. You have capabilities such as AD object repair. So if there's an object that has an issue or there's some type of corruption of that particular object, previously you'd have to delete that object and recreate it, which you could still do, but now you have the ability to do object repair and see if you can repair that without having to delete it and recreate it. You still have the good old DC promo to automate building of domain controllers, which is great. So they didn't sunset that command yet. You have local security authority name instead of lookup that has improved algorithms for those lookups, so you can query your Active Directory databases faster, which is fantastic. You also have security and confidential attributes that you can add. That way you can set up better ACLs to limit who can look for what in your Active Directory. So those things, like if you have some confidential attributes, well, then it makes sure things such as the connection's encrypted and such things like that. So it gives you much better security over your Active Directory. So these are some fantastic improvements that are needed. Active Directory also uses randomly generated computer account passwords now. So that way you don't have to worry about those accounts having like a set password or anything like that, because those are going to be randomly generated. And you can also control those by your group policies. Lane Manager GPO settings allows you to add the network security of don't store your LAN manager hash value, which is nice. You also have encryption enabled for LDAP by default, which is wonderful, and support for TLS 1.3. That way your S channels are going to be a lot more secure by using better TLS. So that's something you'll definitely want to upgrade if you're coming from an older environment, which most typically are. It has really good feature with integration with Azure to Arc. Microsoft's very loving to their Azure, which, it's understandable. Azure is their future, and the Azure Arc allows you to have that management between Azure and your on-prem, or even if you've got your Windows Server and other cloud services, it allows you to manage and set up policies through your Azure portal for centralized management, which is fantastic. You also have block cloning support, and that actually was enabled with Windows 11 24H2 along with Server 2025. The drive supports block cloning. So what that means is it's part of the ReFS file system and allows you to do block by block copies, making your copies a lot faster. Now, so what that allows you to do is the server will allow you to quickly, much more quickly and efficiently make copies of files, but they'll treat it as like a metadata type copy instead of a full-blown where you're doing full-blown read and write operations to the physical media. This allows it to go much faster. So there's actually a whole article on block cloning in ReFS, so that's something you may want to look into. Bluetooth is now available, Windows Server 2025, which I think that is both kind of cool and kind of honestly unneeded, but that's a new feature nonetheless. Credential Guard is a wonderful new feature. So Credential Guard, what it does is it protects your accounts. So like your password hashes, things like that. And so having that enabled by default is a wonderful security item that you don't have to worry about. There's also a new OpenSSH that is, I think it's enabled by default now. So the OpenSSH server is now installed by default. So we'll have to take a look at that. Another great feature that's now, a lot of businesses will really look forward to is Windows LAPS. There's a lot of improvements on that within Server 2025. LAPS stands for Local Administrator Password Solution. It was introduced several years ago as an add-on that you installed. Well, now it's part of the server, which is fantastic. But it allows you to essentially set up your local admins on your Windows PCs and set up their local passwords. And you can have it change it however often you want. A lot of orgs usually use like 30-day increments. And you can also set the password length, the complexity, things like that. And it stores it within your Active Directory attributes. And it takes minutes to set up. LAPS is a wonderful feature. I've used it quite a bit in the past. And with that though, there's also a new feature within LAPS, which is really cool. It's, instead of it just being a long string of characters, it allows you to use passphrases, which is absolutely awesome because personally, I'm a huge fan of passphrases over passwords. Passphrases ties several words together, and usually some numbers and sometimes special characters. And it's so much easier to type because it's English. And it's so much easier to remember. Whereas passwords are typically, alphanumeric, a bunch of characters, alphabetic soup more or less. And you just chuck it all in, and trying to type that out isn't exactly easy. So I love the fact that it now has passphrase feature, which is absolutely wonderful. There's also better readability in those passwords and things too. There's another great feature that's going to be installed by default is Winget. If you've not watched the video yet, we do have a video on Winget on the channel. I highly suggest you take a look at it because Winget is a fantastic tool. Makes installing applications, upgrading, patching so much easier. But Winget is now part of the Windows Package Manager. Winget is now part of Server 2025, which is great. So as you can see, I've got Server 2025 up here. Let's go ahead and accept our diagnostic data and stuff. And this is the first time I booted up Server 2025. So you and I get to see it at the exact same time. There's nothing I did before this, so we'll take a look. So of course it's going to be pushing for Azure Arc. You can start using Azure Arc. Looks like the service is already set up and ready to go. All right, let's see. Since this is a server on Proxmox, I don't have all the drivers, I'm sure, so I'll need to check that out. Let's see if there's any drivers missing. Okay, so anytime you run Windows on Proxmox, it doesn't include the VirtIO drivers, unfortunately, still. So we'll want to install those here. So let's go ahead and just grab these, install them. I just install them all. That way it'll work with our KVM. There we go. And now we have internet. So let's see. Check for updates. We'll see if there's any new updates for our server 2025 eval. Yeah, I argue the biggest improvements is going to be your Active Directory, Laps, Credential Guard, OpenSSH, things like that. OpenSSH may not be that big of a deal for you. I'm a huge fan. Of course, you always, in Windows, really, you have PowerShell remoting, so it's not that big of a deal. There's also some new features when it comes to like networking and Hyper-V and things within Server 2025 too. So if you're in Hyper-V shop, there may be some Hyper-V settings that you're looking forward to. Your standard Windows terminal, just like a Windows 11 now, which is nice. You can change what your main profile is going to be in your main terminal application. I love the Windows terminal. I have to fully admit, this is a fantastic terminal app. In case you're not familiar with it, let's just do a quick intro. In Windows Server, when you first start up, you have the server manager here. And what this shows is basically what services, what roles you have installed. By default, you have a few basic things, such as your manageability items. You have an all server section, local server section that allows you to access the servers in your area, because the whole idea of this is for enterprises. You can go in here and see all of your servers listed and their event viewers and things like that, or just the local server that you're on. You could see that here and have quick view of, okay, is your AV on? Do you have remote desktop enabled? Like here, we've got it disabled. You know, do you have Azure Arc working? Is your SSH access enabled? Here it's disabled. So it makes it nice for those things. And then from here, we break down into, okay, here's your management. So we have file and storage services, which are installed on all servers by default, which gives you, again, a list of servers that are running this service. And then you have your different volumes, such as your disks that you could see, partitions, any storage pools that you've built, whether it's virtual or physical disks, things like that. So you can create various services. And from here, you can add things such as roles and features, which means you add, like, let's say you want more like DFS, where you could have a distributed file system spread along several servers. Or perhaps you want to install Active Directory, DNS, DHCP, things like that. This is where you go to install those things. Also, you can go in here, add servers, create server groups. There's all kinds of cool things that you can do. And then your tools are in here. Anything that you install on your console as far as server roles go, then the remote management applications are installed in here under tools automatically. Right now, this server's bare bones, so there's really not much in here. In future videos, we might dive into this. If there's something that you want to see in Windows Server that you want me to talk about or go through, by all means, please make a comment down below. Share your thoughts. I love hearing what you guys think. This video kind of today was just me rambling about some of the new features and showing installation of Server 2025. Hopefully you found this informative and educational. We're going to get into the nitty-gritty on Windows Server and break down things like how to use Azure Arc, installing and setting up Active Directory, DNS, DHCP, how all those things interconnect. We'll set up some workstations too, so show you how to connect them into Active Directory, how those play with things such as Intune, Azure, things of that nature. So we're going to be looking both at a legacy enterprise-based setup of your network, and then we're also going to be looking at non-legacy, modern workplace setups for more modern IT professional approach. So be sure to watch for those videos coming out. I've got a lot of exciting stuff that I'm planning, and we'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.